we all know that the Warriors explode in the third quarter. They've been doing it for many years. You can make an argument that that team is the 31st team in the league the way they play in the third quarter. Because I don't know what it is about them going into halftime and then coming out and then time for the third quarter. It's a switch that just happens. I don't know what it is. I don't know if they check their Twitter mentions or whatever, but they just play different in the third quarter. How do Boston withstand those third quarters? Because we know they're coming. What does Boston have to do to withstand those third quarters onslaughts from the Warriors?
Yeah, I think the main thing is to limit turnovers. We saw them get like 30+% of their points in that game 2 win from off turnovers from the Celtics. I don't know how many of that came in the third quarter, but it seems like, in both these games, the Celtics have been a little more sloppy in that third quarter than they were in the first two. You can't continue to do that because the Warriors will take advantage of it. They did in game 1, even though it didn't turn into a win. And then in game 2, I mean, the game was over by the end of that third quarter. So if something happens like that tonight, then it could be a home loss and you could be right back down 2-1. I feel like the main thing for them is to limit those turnovers. There's a bunch of other things that they have to do as well, but I feel like that has to be the key coming out of the locker room.
Tunde, you're on mute.
I know, I got you.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, I think Chaz hit the nail on the head. A lot of it is turnovers and shots that are and missed shots and bad shots that are essentially turnovers.
Right.
They all kind of allow the same thing, which is for the Warriors to push and get in transition. For all the consternation that people are having with ball screens, and this is well deserved. I think like the Celtics are just like they're really tough to score on in the half court, and any possession where the Celtics can get set up defensively, I think you gotta go in. They'll go into that feeling like they've got a real good chance to get a stop.
Mm-hmm.
The issue is when you have live ball turnovers and some of those aforementioned bad possessions that allow for runouts, they don't get to do that. And the Warriors have been able to be, really efficient in transition and semi-transition. So I think that's where a lot of the third quarter runs have been in both games. So it's a matter of limiting those opportunities for them. And if you limit those opportunities for them, they're gonna give themselves a much better chance to solve some of the issues that we've seen for them, in this series. I will say though, it's a 1-1 series. You guys have heard me say this before, but these playoff series are they're long. There's lots of ebbs and flows,
Adjustments
to make. No matter what happens tonight, there's going to be a lot more basketball in this series, and that goes for both teams. So nobody's panicking after tonight.
Yeah, I agree. I do think, to me, I do think Boston needs to win a little more than Golden State. Just because the way that they perform at home, it really has nothing to do with the finals itself. I think they need a great home performance in order for them to get some momentum going, to get Jayson Tatum going. Because right now, again, me and Chas talked about earlier, he played an okay first game. He was doing everything but really scoring. Game 2, he was scoring okay, but everything else was subpar at best. So he needs to put everything together and have a complete game, which I think he will in game 3. But I do think this game matters a little bit more to the Celtics than it does the Warriors, because I think it's a psychological advantage to Boston if they were able to win this game, because they don't particularly play well at home, and we all know this. But real quick, Chaz, I wanted to get your best closing lineup for Boston.
For Boston, yeah, we kind of talked about it earlier. I think, with Robert Williams being impacted the way he is, I would say it's probably some variation of going small, where you go with, Smart, Brown, Tatum, Horford. And then if they're playing like they are in game 1 and game 2, it's probably Derek White. I think he gives you, the offense that somebody like Grant Williams does, but then he's also somebody that can guard Stephen Curry pretty well. I thought he did a pretty good job, in that second half of game 1. So I feel like it's probably Derek White to this point. But, for Udoka, I feel like it's kind of a game-to-game situation. I mean, if Grant Williams is knocking down shots like he was in I mean, game 7 against Milwaukee, then he obviously has to be in that lineup. But I feel like it's one of those bench guys. I mean, I would love for it to be Robert Williams. I think that's when this team was at their best during the season, but he can't play like that right now. So I would probably lean towards Derek White.
Tunde, best closing lineup for Boston.
I mean, I would say it's a lot of what Chaz said. It's probably not going to have Robert Williams in it as it stands right now. So you're probably looking at something like Smart, Tatum Brown, Horford, Grant Williams, Al Horford. And then depending on what things look like with Derek White, you maybe go extra small and like have Smart and have like Smart and Derek White in there, and then maybe you take out Grant Williams and you just have Al Horford as the lone true big in there. But I think it'll end up looking something like that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we're 3 for 3 here. I agree with almost everything that Chaz said. I do think that Boston playing small is the right thing to do in this instinct, but I also, as I said earlier, I think they have the decisive advantage if they're playing big. But the problem is that the Warriors do so, they draw your bigs out. And right now, I don't think Robert Williams, he can be able to come out to that 3-point line and, basically compete with the Stephs in the Jordan Poole, because he's not 100%. So I do think right now them going small is kind of their best scenario in order to compete with that small ball Warriors team. You are listening to the Spoken Truth podcast on YouTube. If you like what we do, please consider subscribing to our YouTube channel and our Spotify account. You can type in the Spoken Truth podcast in your search engine or both platforms.